Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the All Systems Go podcast. I'm your host, of course, Chris L. Davis, the founder of Automation Bridge. And on this episode, I've got a trippy full circle story of our guest today, but I am excited to have him on, and we reconnected. I thought we were connecting, but we reconnected when I reached out to him via LinkedIn, and I saw just so many product updates coming from his from the platform that the software that he's created. And it is Derrick Reimer, and he is a full stack software developer, indie SaaS founder, and podcaster. He's currently building SavvyCal, which is the topic of today, with a small, scrappy team. Previously, he was the technical co-founder of Drip, acquired by Leadpages in 2016, and Codetree. Derrick was the co-host of the Art of Product podcast and is currently a regular contributor on Startups for the Rest of Us. Derrick, great to have you on the podcast. How are you doing?
I am doing well. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yes.
I was pleased when we reconnected on LinkedIn, and I think I remembered running into you in the office shortly after the acquisition. And at the time, I'll be honest, my hair was on fire most of the time because we were dealing with with a scaling problem. So I think I was cordoned off in the corner of the office, away from most of the other humans there. But yeah, great to reconnect.
Yes. So funny full story, full circle story for everyone. I was there was an overlap. What Derrick is mentioning when Leadpages acquired Drip, and my time at Leadpages, there was maybe a month overlap before I left. And we most definitely saw each other in passing. I'm 100% sure of that. But Derrick was on the engineering side, so we're connected on LinkedIn. And he's the founder of SavvyCal, was super slick calendar software that we'll talk about today. And he just had a regular product update video that he posted on LinkedIn. But the feature, I was like, oh my gosh, this feature is amazing. We reconnected. I extended the invitation and he's here. And it wasn't until we reconnected in the direct messages. It was like, hey, yeah, I was at Drip when, I was the co-founder of Drip when it was acquired. And I was like, wait a minute, and just kind of blew my mind. So it's just funny, man. And here's what I would say, Derrick. I tell people this all the time, especially if you're in the startup space, but it really applies to anywhere. I tell people, do your best to treat people right wherever you're at. Don't burn bridges, build them,
Yeah.
because you never know where you'll be or where that person will be, so
Reputation is everything, and this industry is not that big, honestly.
it's not. You're,
So,
you're correct, Derrick. Yep, you're
yeah.
correct. So you're the co-founder of SavvyCal, and before I give you the floor and kind of talk about your journey, your founder's journey, I just want to say this to everybody. You can always the quality of a product is always going to be contingent on the understanding that the founder or creator of that product has of a variety of use cases. If you have a founder that does not have any kind of pulse to the market, or doesn't know why would somebody use this, but they have the ability, money, and coding to build something, you want to stay away from that software. And as we go through this podcast, you'll hear that it's a very utility based approach. I find your product development, which is what I absolutely love. And everybody, I'm on the verge of migrating, just so you all know right now. So anyways, Derrick, this is about you. Let us know. You've got software developing background. You're a co-founder times two. You've built companies. You've been a part of acquisition. Where did it start?
Yeah. I didn't know throughout my entire childhood that I wanted to be in the software industry, but I was definitely taught at a young age by my dad. He was a mechanical engineer, and very much, even though he wasn't paid to write software in his work, he's the kind of guy that taught himself how to code in order to make his job more efficient and everyone else's job around him more efficient. And So I can't remember the exact age, but we had a computer in the house, and he taught me DOS Basic, and I remember playing around with basic conditional statements in there, and feeling like, wow,
Wow.
this is pretty incredible. And this was the mid '90s at the time, and so I always toyed around with software, but always thought that in order to be a professional software developer, you would have to write in C++ and sit in a cubicle all day long. I just had this picture in my mind that
Yep.
that is what a professionalized version of the hobby that I enjoyed looked like. And that stuck with me actually for a really long time. I don't know what the block was there, but I just, I went through high school, loved math, majored in math in college. There's not a ton you can do with an undergrad in math unless you want to go on and get more education and teach or something like that. So
Yeah.
it sort of is a general purpose degree. So I get to the end of college and I'm looking around thinking, what do I want to do with my career? And I was always interested in entrepreneurship. I had started following 37 Signals, Basecamp,
Yes. Yes.
around, I don't know, 2009, 2010 was when I really was just kind of watching every video they put out, reading their books, and really drinking the Kool-Aid of like you can build software companies that are really scalable and really profitable without having to try to get into the venture capital ecosystem, and that
Yeah.
really appealed to me.
Mm.
Being able to create my own destiny and be independent, and I saw this as the pathway, like marrying this thing that I had enjoyed as a hobby for a long time, and actually, you know, starting to recognize the power of SaaS and how scalable it is and how much you can get done with one or two people. And
Yeah.
that really, really appealed to me. So I started building things, started participating in local competitions, won $10,000 when I was fresh out of college from a local coding
Wow.
competition. I actually met
Wow.
Rob Walling there, my future co-founder
Yep.
of Drip, and so sort of just stayed in the ecosystem, tried a bunch of stuff, made a bunch of mistakes, trying to build SaaS apps back in 2010, 2011. And then ultimately started working with Rob on some projects, and then we co-founded Drip, and then the rest is history.
Yeah, yeah. So very interesting that you were able to be exposed to that engineering approach young, and you kind of like selected which part of it that you liked or what was
Mm-hmm.
intriguing to you. And as a parent, one of the things that I try to do is expose my children to, one, as much as the stuff that I do, and two, just stuff, different
Yeah.
sports, different arts, just everything, because you never know what's gonna stick,
Mm-hmm.
and you never know what'll help guide them. So now you've got a ton of learn. I can only imagine the lessons. Well, first off, let me say, was when you and Rob partnered, was that your first SaaS application?
No, I had
Okay.
tried and kind of failed to launch a couple other things. Like I'd
Okay.
only really achieved, maybe a couple $100 a month in MRR.
Yep.
I built a tool that integrated with Twitter, and it's funny to watch now that there continues to be people dealing with platform risk integrating with Twitter. But at the time, I had
Yeah.
built this thing that helps you filter for demand. Basically, like if you were a local restaurant and someone was tweeting about wanting a recommendation for a sushi restaurant, I had this tool that could monitor Twitter and let you know when people are expressing demand for something. It's kind of a novel
Nice.
idea. But then I think Twitter API restrictions kind of made that not feasible pretty quickly after I started working on it. So I got a
Hmm.
taste of platform risk. But yeah, I just had a couple of projects like that. Nothing that really took off, but I gained a lot of experience with learning how to develop SaaS applications, like the technical side of things, and that
Yeah.
that definitely carried that with me through
Yeah.
my next steps.
And it sounds like Rob was a partnering brain, kind of like complementary, to your skill
Yeah.
set and expertise.
Yeah, so I think as I reflect on how we kind of started working together, at the time he had acquired HitTail, which was this
Yep.
search
Yep.
engine optimization tool. Yeah.
Trip down memory lane, man.
Yeah, yeah. And it was like I don't know, a couple $1,000s MRR, and he had grown it like 10x it by applying all the principles he had learned about building growing SaaS apps. And I think it was at that time he was kind of looking for focusing his efforts on something else and looking for someone to kind of help do product management for Hittail and see if
Yeah.
we could continue to grow it. And that's where he recognized that I was at a place in my career where I was struggling to get traction with things, but I was hungry and I wanted to learn more. I wanted to be a student of building SaaS applications, figuring out how to do this thing.
Yeah.
And he caught me at a really good time where I was like kind of between, like, I don't know, maybe I'll go get a job doing something else or start consulting for local businesses, building websites or something,
Yeah. Yeah.
which would have been fine. But I think he recognized, like, no, I think you have skills in this industry, and I think you can help me. Like, you can kind of be an apprentice of mine and also get paid to do real work on Hittail.
Yeah.
And I was working on Hittail only for a couple of months, actually. But I built some features for it and wrote an email course, and we actually kind of started workshopping the initial idea for Drip, which was started with like an email capture widget that you could install on all of your pages on your website. I don't think anyone else was really doing that at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So we wrote this little JavaScript widget where you could capture email addresses and blanket it across all, 900 page SEO optimized pages on Hittail.
Yeah.
And then I think the wheels started turning with Rob. He was like, oh, we could actually maybe turn this into a separate product. And I just started out as truly a contractor. Like, I went from being
Yeah.
kind of a contract part-time product manager for Hittail, and then Rob asked me basically, am I interested in building the first version of Drip, and pitched me on it. I did that part-time on Hittail, part-time on Drip, and then
Wow.
gradually moved to full-time, and then kind of adopted that co-founder title once. That was basically how I was operating in the relationship.
I love it, man. And I love to hear your evolution. And in it, unsaid, but I know it's there, is you also learned leadership skills and team management skills,
Yeah.
along the way. And these are all skills that you would take into your, the latest endeavor and beyond. I mean, it's not just SavvyCal that your hands are in, but that's the topic of discussion today. And let me give all the listeners a quick overview. It's easy. SavvyCal is online scheduling software. All right, there. We've got that out the way. The more important piece is this. You've got the big boys or the big guys out there, right? You have your Calendly, you had Acuity. I think people use BookMe now. I mean, you just name it. Put calendar and booking somewhere in the URL, and it's a platform. AppSumo's flooded with new online scheduling apps. You have platforms like Go High Level that are all in one. They say, hey, we've got schedulers in our CRM. So Derrick, what did you see? This is going to be a twofold question. What did you see that the market was missing, and who gave you permission to build another calendar app? how did you work through that?
Yeah. So I was, when I started working on drawing board on, I knew I wanted to build something else, but I wasn't exactly sure what. And so it started with honestly looking through kind of old journal notes where I will periodically write down, think about all of the tools that I've used in my tool chest, and what do I like, what has been sort of deficient in my experience with those tools.
Wow.
And scheduling was an interesting one. I've been a Calendly user for a long time, not a heavy
Yep.
user myself. I'm mostly in maker time, and I don't do a ton of meetings, but
Mm-hmm.
I built a Calendly integration with Drip in the early days, and we used it a bunch when we were doing demos. And so I was very familiar with the tool. And back in 2013, 2014, it was pretty amazing. Like, it was this simple, elegant tool that was way nicer than like other scheduling interfaces you deal with, like for doctor scheduling or something. Like, Calendly was clean, crisp, modern, and it just felt like they were the way to go.
Yeah.
And so very familiar with it. But then fast forward to 2020, and I realized that Calendly kind of hadn't changed much. Like, it was very, very much the same as it was back in 5-6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I started picking up on some things that I noticed in my own patterns of needing to use it. I go in seasons of needing to use it more when I'm booking a bunch of customer interviews or something.
Yeah.
And I always felt, as a maker, I felt anxiety around sending out a booking link and then wrecking my schedule. Right. So,
Yep.
like, what is
Same here.
Calendly doing to help protect my deep work time. And so
Yeah.
that was something that sparked my initial interest, I think, was just recognizing like, I need to use this tool from time to time, but there's always some hesitation there. And why is that? So I started pulling on that thread.
Man, that's good.
And that gave me the insight to, when I'm configuring my link, I want to see an immediate preview of my calendar and the availability it's going to be shown to people right there, so I can quickly block out days or modify things on the fly if I need to before I send out that link, so I can feel confident that I'm not going to wreck my calendar. And also infuse, more intelligence. Like, can we encourage people to book in afternoons, for example? And even though I want to make mornings available if they really need it, but I really prefer afternoons. So can my scheduling link represent those preferences and help me to be accommodating, but also hopefully shield my deep work as much as possible? So there was that. And I also noticed this thing that comes up, I feel like every other week on Twitter. Someone's talking about being offended by receiving a Calendly link, which I think is I think it's mostly bogus, to be honest. Like, people get way too precious about feeling like, oh, you're making me do work using
Yeah.
your scheduling link.
Yeah.
And so I think it's, people need to kind of take a step back and evaluate whether they're getting worked up about the right things. But I will say that out of that insight came this desire to create an experience that feels more collaborative. I think sending a Calendly link just sort of, in many cases, it just feels like a power move. Like, all right, you want to book time with me? Well, here, use my link. I will, kind of hold the power position in this dynamic. So I started thinking about ways to make it feel like it was just as convenient for the other person. And out of that came kind of our visual calendar interface on the booking side, where the person receiving the link can click a toggle and overlay their calendar on top of your scheduling link. And I'm not aware of any other tool that's really doing it in this way, where it's both visual and available to people who aren't already users of the product. And so, that's another thing where it's like, anytime I would receive a Calendly link, I pop open a tab to open my calendar, and then I'm clicking back and forth and
Oh my god.
trying to find it. And so I wanted to see if we could do that a lot better. And so those are sort of the two key insights that sent me down this path of feeling, I think there's other demand there for that.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you did, because I feel like these are small things. When I look at efficiency, I mean, the output of automating anything is efficiency. If you don't become more efficient in whatever that thing is, then automation hasn't done its job. So I'm huge advocate of efficiency. And when you think about it, it's a matter of saving seconds and minutes, how wherever you can. So yes, somebody could say, well, I don't have a problem just pulling up my calendar before scheduling and seeing. Well, guess what? I do. Because in the flow of things, me going to pull up a this is this decision fatigue. Maybe when I pull up my calendar, I'm distracted because I have another meeting and now I'm looking at that. There's just all types of things that little bitty 1 second to 1 minute thing can potentially blow up. So when I gave SavvyCal a test run, you all didn't have that yet. You didn't have it yet. It was just, you know what it reminded me of? There's this feeling that I get with very lean, flexible software. And I reflect on it when I was using Infusionsoft at the time and went to Active Campaign. I was just like, it's just so easy to get in it and do more. It's too good to be true. So I had that feeling because you had it. Excuse me. Let me go down a basic checklist, everybody, if you don't have an online scheduling software. First and foremost, it needs to integrate with your calendar software. Primarily, Google account is what most people use, but it can go beyond, and not just one calendar. It should be able to sync with multiple calendars. After that, you need to be able, we're talking about the bare minimum. You should be able to create different appointment types. So I've got an appointment for scheduling for the podcast. I got another appointment for maybe sales calls, things of that nature. And you should be able to share that availability across all of them, as well as set availability differently for every calendar. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Next, you should be able to have some set the duration of the appointments and then have some buffer time so that people can't schedule back to back. If you check these boxes, well, let me say this: let it embed on your website. Like let's let's check that standard box too.
Yep.
But if you do those things, everything else becomes more of how well do you do beyond the basics, right? So some of the beyond the basics I was using at SavvyCal before you introduced the overlay were the intake forms.
Mm-hmm.
And when I test the intake form, I want to see what kind of custom fields can I create before somebody schedules, and can I pre-populate them? Derrick, I
Mm-hmm.
thought I was going to get you. I was like, surely they can't do that. And sure enough, not only could I pre-populate name and email, but also any answer. And it was extremely simple. So SavvyCal got my attention there. And then there's
Yep.
something in there. Listen, everybody. This again, I'm beyond the basics here. Usually, just by default, you send out reminders. Beforehand, I was a Acuity user in the beginning, and then I migrated to Calendly. So when I was using Acuity, you could customize those reminders per appointment and really, granular how many you wanted to send and when. Calendly has it too, but that's really where I got familiar doing it. But let me say this: in SavvyCal, you blew me away with this. You can go and set up. There's like three events. I'm going off memory here. I don't have my account put up. It's before the event, during the event, and after the event. Now, everybody, you're like, oh, okay. No, that is not standard. There is usually a before and after. That's it. There is no during. Now, watch
Yeah.
this. Let's just take it a step further. Not only can I select multiple actions to happen at any of those times, I can also integrate with Zapier and send a webhook. For my non-techie people, what I just said is I can make any software do anything that I want it to do by triggering time before the event, during the event, and after the event. I know this is advanced, but for my folks who use scheduling software, you don't see it. So this is why Calendly SavvyCal stayed on my radar while I was using Calendly. Then I get the email because I can't wait to get emails from companies that I follow and are doing product updates. And you said I can't remember how you worded, but it was overlaying your calendar. I was like, yeah, right. That like makes so much sense. There's a reason why it hasn't been done, right? Like, there's no way this is possible. And then I go, and sure enough, if you're a SavvyCal user, it's easy because it'll just detect it automatically. But if you're not, all it does is ask for you to sign into Google, and it will display it right over there. And I say, you know how many times I have been hesitant to schedule on somebody else's link because I just either was on the go and couldn't pull up my calendar. So I have to wait till I get home to look at my calendar and to be able to display it. And not just that, because Calendly has a feature where it will show green the times that you're available if you're a Calendly user.
Right.
And if you're logged
Yep.
in, you got to satisfy both of those conditions. But it just says you're available, and then you got to click another one, and it'll kind of like show you what events are there. But being able to see my entire week, the meetings that I have planned, Derrick, it's bigger than just being able to not overbook. I can plan my week effectively,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? I love it. I love it.
Yeah, that's something that I definitely felt because I know for some people in some roles, their main mode of operation is to just get their calendar booked up. Like if you're a salesperson, you want to like book calls as fast as possible, as quickly as possible to make sure you can close deals. So you
Yeah.
may be in a little bit different mindset. But
Yeah.
if you're juggling kind of balancing between focus mode and needing to take meetings with people, like I found when I look at my week, I do have kind of subtle preferences on when I want a meeting to happen. And it's a function of what does the flow of my week look like? And so that's
Yeah.
where I think the real power of the visual interface that I've not seen in any other tool, it allows the person scheduling to quickly at a glance get a feel for, Yeah, the first part of my week is really busy, and Wednesday is my focus day. So I think Thursday, that's going to be the ideal time. Being able to
Yes.
get that high fidelity information at a glance, I think
Yeah.
is really powerful.
Yeah, and it's really control. You want to be able to control your calendar and not let your calendar control you. Derrick, you said something while you were talking about how you came up with the idea of SavvyCal, and that was you kept a journal. You kept a
Mm-hmm.
journal, just kind of like, hey, what am I enjoying about this software? What do I wish it could do? And you're actually the first person that I met that does that because I do it. And since I haven't met anybody that does it, I kind of
Mm-hmm.
keep it as a secret. Like I don't want
Mm-hmm.
people to think I'm too nerdy here, but I do, man. Because
Yeah.
sometimes it's my defense against shiny object syndrome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because marketers are marketers, man, and they're good. They can put some up, and you're like, oh my gosh, I need that. They sold me a comb. What am I gonna use a comb for? I have no hair. There. Well, one day maybe it'll grow back like Benjamin Button. No, it's gone. It'll never happen. But that's what marketers do, especially good. Anyways, so
Yeah.
I always need to make sure that I'm clear. What can this thing do? And what do I wish it could do? And what's the
Mm-hmm.
priority of it? Is it
Mm-hmm.
important? And funny enough, I ran through a similar thing with SavvyCal. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I have it up. I just did this one like in a notepad because I was just like,
Yeah.
all right, I'm not going to read it everybody, but this is what I did. I said, what can SavvyCal do that Calendly can't? And then what can Calendly do that SavvyCal can't?
Mm-hmm.
That was my list, and I just had some bullet points. And truth be told, the biggest thing that jumped out that Calendly does that SavvyCal doesn't was a mobile app. Out of
Yep.
all of the features,
Yep.
that was the only thing that was on there that I was like, wow. So then it became, well, now it becomes a matter of how important is the mobile app,
Yep.
right? Because
Yep.
what SavvyCal can do that Calendly can't, got like 5 bullet points.
Mm-hmm.
So now I just all I'm saying is I can make an intelligent decision now, and when I say yes, I know exactly why I'm saying yes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to ask, well, one of the features I wanted to just kind of do like a feature shoot off here, and give you the floor and what was the idea behind that. There's a few things that I've got highlighted here, and one of them I'm going to mention. Actually, there's two, believe it or not, that I was surprised that Calendly didn't allow me to do. And I just want to kind of hear your thoughts on, were you aware of that when you set these features,
Mm-hmm.
or was that just something like I scratched my own itch and just so happened to be nobody had that itch, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one of them is when I schedule when I have an international community. So whether it's a podcast or somebody wants to schedule a call, if you're in a different time zone, I don't want to create the same meeting U.S. times and then this clone it and do it for like international times because
Yep.
I can't control where you're at in the world. So what I usually tell people to do is find the day, schedule on that day, and then send me an email on where you want me to move it to. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
move it to whatever availability wasn't in that time zone. Well, I could thought it would be easy. You can't do it. And Calendly, as an admin, I am an admin to my own account. I should be able to override my time and availability, my buffer rules, everything. I'm an admin. Let me control it. I'm subject to the same restrictions as a end user.
Mm-hmm.
I can't move that anywhere. And here's the problem, Derrick. I can go into my Google Calendar, duplicate it at the appropriate time, but guess what? Then all of the reminders are broken
Right. Right.
because it's tied
Yeah.
to the original time. So in SavvyCal, of course, you can go in and move that meeting. You can reschedule it and move it to wherever you need to. Were you aware of limitations of other platforms, or was that just something that you knew needed to happen and take place?
I actually was not. I was not aware that that limitation was in other platforms. I will be honest and say that when we first implemented our rescheduling, we made the same mistake where we sort of presented the availability regardless of whether you were logged in as the owner of the link or not. It was just a representation of the scheduling link itself.
Yep.
And I will tell you, I feel like within a couple of weeks of launching our reschedule functionality, which was really early on, because it's one of those extremely basic essential features in a scheduling tool.
Yep.
Our customers, and I give all the credit to customers, were pretty vocal about like, hey, I own this link. I want to be able to move the meeting wherever I want. And I think this is when you're David and Goliath in the situation where David up against, Calendly Goliath,
Mm-hmm.
one of the big advantages we have is we can be really nimble and we can be really responsive to
Yes.
customer requests like this. And so to me, when something as clear as this comes through where it just makes sense, immediately when we hear like, oh, of course you should be able to do that. And I think this is something that we've been able to kind of set ourselves apart from Calendly with. Like, Calendly has a little bit of a reputation for having, feature request forums where things just sit there for years unanswered or
Mm-hmm.
unaddressed, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and I understand why that happens. When you become a company of a certain size,
Yeah.
it's really hard to turn that ship and to move quickly on things.
Yes.
And so I both feel for them in that respect, that it gets more difficult when you have a large organization with hundreds of thousands of customers. But it's also something that we can leverage that to our advantage as an upstart. Like, yeah, you're signing on to something that's a little bit more, we're newer. We early on didn't have all the features that Calendly had, but what we did have was the ability to be really nimble and responsive to customer requests like that.
Yeah.
And so we leveraged that a ton as we were kind of, I would say, playing catch up with kind of the table stakes features that you would expect in a scheduling tool. Because we launched a couple of months after after first breaking ground on the code base. So there was a ton of things we were missing for the first year and a half.
Yep.
And so the way we survived was by moving really quickly and trying to make sure when we solve something like this one, we do it better than the competition does.
Yeah, and that you did. And there's another one. And everybody, I'm saying this from I've been doing online scheduling. I don't know, but when Time Trade was like one of the only platforms. It was like Time Trade and Schedule Once were the only small business links. So if you don't know what those are, just know I dated myself in technical years. So I'm extremely familiar. And again, if you just need the basics, SavvyCal can definitely do the basics, but I just want to make sure that I'm highlighting some of the more advanced features because my user base is a little more broad in that sense. One of the things that was a pleasant surprise, and I didn't really realize it was a limiting factor for me, was if I have a, let's say, sales call, okay, and I want to, we'll use podcasts. There's only so many podcasts I could do a week. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like after that, I'm just kind of like, all right, if I have 3 booked this week, time out. Okay, that's enough. And in SavvyCal, what I realized is that you can do it now. Calendly will do it per day. And that sounds cool until you realize like, well, that just means if I say no more than 2 a day, that means I could have a 5 a week. Mm-hmm. That's still stressful. I need to be able to control. So I was extremely happy and surprised too when I saw that you have it to where you can do it per day, per week, and per month. Yeah. So you can really, and this is automated, everyone. You set your calendar and say, okay, this event type, you can schedule no more than 2 of these a week or no more of 2 of these a month. And then once those 2 have been satisfied, it's blocked off until the next month, next week, so on and so forth. So now that I haven't seen again in any other scheduling platform, was that another case of listening to the user base and saying, oh, I could see a use case for that?
Yeah, I think that one was certainly something that I wanted because I'm coming from the maker standpoint of, I have to do calls, but I'm trying not to overtax myself or let my calendar go wild. And so I knew I wanted frequency limits, and then I think that the insight about having more levels like that probably came from brainstorming with customers.
Okay.
That was also an early one, but I think, and I think it was partially in pursuit of looking for problems to solve that would set us a bit apart, right? Like when you enter a
Yeah.
market like this, um, it's really hard to get above the noise level. Like you said, there's hundreds of scheduling tools, many of which have been around for a really long time. So they have big SEO footprints, and so just breaking into the conversation is really difficult.
Yeah.
And so I think it was ultimately the main motivation is to deliver value to customers and do it in a way that's kind of the best, right? And then there's also the angle of like, I we need to pick some audiences that we really want to appeal to first and try to
Mm-hmm.
gain a foothold there, and then we can gradually expand. And for me, it's just people who care about deep work, care about making sure their calendar stays sane. That resonates really well with me, and I feel like I could speak to that audience pretty well. Like they're kind of
Yeah.
in my circles of people that I can reach, and so I felt really, really strongly that we need to try to knock it out of the park for those folks early on.
Yeah, I love that because when you start, and everybody, this is why I have Derrick on, is so that you can kind of see the heart of the founder and understand the motivations and the reason why it was created. Because if you share those same motivations, the software is going to be a lot more suited to you. Derrick, I'll admit, as you're talking, this is resonating strongly with me. Deep work, really being able to control your calendar, and there's no secret why it's been so appealing. And when I look at like Calendly, and remember, everybody, I'm not throwing them under the bus. I use them, I support them. Good job on software, but you also have to realize who they're building that software for. I feel like Calendly is going more enterprise, more sales based, and all of that. And I'll give you an example. I'm not just pulling this out of the air to say something on the podcast. Watch this. Two of the same features, everyone. Okay, so it's almost the same, but Calendly has a routing feature where they can enter. You can ask for some information up front, and then depending on the answers, it routes you to a different scheduling link, right? But for me, that information that you capture, I to this day, I haven't tested Zapier. Maybe it's been updated or Make or anything else. That routing form doesn't feed to Zapier. Those
Interesting.
responses cannot feed into my CRM, which is
Hmm.
pointless to me, but I can see the use case for a sales team. You may
Mm-hmm.
not care about the information if they weren't qualified. So
Hmm.
just, whenever something's on my calendar, I just call them and, whatever. I think there's a huge opportunity loss. Whereas you go and look at SavvyCal, every one of the forms that you can create, it's a little different because they're not technically routing forms, but every form that you can create attached to an event, yes, it does feed through to
Right.
Zapier. So
Yeah.
for me, if I needed routing like Calendly, and just because SavvyCal doesn't have it now, I would still have the confidence because of how you've built everything else that if
Hmm.
and when it is implemented, it would probably check that box a lot faster
Yeah.
than the bigger companies.
Yeah. I mean, it's so challenging, and I do want to say, like, I owe a debt of gratitude to Calendly for kind of paving the path for tools like mine. Like I say, we stand on the shoulders of giants here.
Yeah.
They educated the market on how these personal scheduling links work, and they
Yep.
kept it simple. They did a lot of things right early on and got a lot of well-earned traction for that. And I, especially now being several years into building SavvyCal, can recognize just how difficult it is to be a horizontally positioned tool. Like
Yeah.
we it would be a lot easier if we could just say SavvyCal is scheduling tool for sales teams or scheduling tool for customer success teams or founders.
Mm-hmm.
But right now we're appealing to all of these groups, and they sort of, I think right now your typical SavvyCal customer may be in one of these buckets, but they kind of care about similar things. So we're kind of
Yeah.
cutting across from a different angle. But still, it's really difficult to just figure out how to continue to build and shape the product in a way that kind of satisfies all of the different verticals that are using it. And that's part of the challenge. I mean, I have fun doing it, but
Yeah.
it definitely yeah, it's definitely doing things on hard mode to a certain extent.
Yeah, yeah. If you could, I know you just said it's not for any one individual. You've probably got a wide variety. But if you could, who do you think, if they're listening to this podcast and they don't have an online calendar or they're dissatisfied with the one that they have, who would probably see the biggest value, like actualize that biggest value the quickest, using
Mm-hmm.
SavvyCal? Is it the founder, the solopreneur, the salesperson, the developer? Like what is
Yeah.
that profile that you all have seen thus far? And if you're listening, say, hey, this would probably be the best scheduling for you.
I would say just because like you know, the tool is biased towards something that I would want, and I'm
Yep.
a independent founder. I think the tool is really
Yep.
really good for people like me who are wearing many hats and running a business and trying to manage their calendar well.
Yep.
That said, we do have a lot of sales teams. Closed CRM is using SavvyCal for all of their initial intake for leads
Nice.
off their
Nice.
website, and that's an area we're increasingly interested in. Partly because the more that we can tie our a lot of the value that SavvyCal can bring, we can tie that back to actually driving business. The more compelling the story is, and
Yeah.
so we also have, I would say, consultants, people who do lightweight consulting or coaching. We have Stripe integration, so you can charge on your links for time slots.
Yep.
Just to give the kind of attack it from the other direction, one
Mm-hmm.
area that we're interested in improving on, but we're probably not fully up to par right now, is I think a lot of Acuity users are kind of becoming a bit dissatisfied with Acuity as a platform. Now that they've been
Yep.
acquired, and maybe it's getting a little dated.
Yep.
But there are certain things like pack booking, like being able to sell a pack of time slots
Yes. Yes.
and spread those out, and like kind of more almost like a lightweight website builder where you can kind of instrument a flow of walking through and picking packages and things. We're missing a lot of that right now, and it's something that we're definitely thinking about trying to tackle. And like, let's try to make SavvyCal a really really compelling Acuity alternative. Certainly
Yeah.
we are for some light duty use cases, but if you're doing a lot of like kind of running an entire consulting practice on Acuity, that's an area where we're a bit behind on, I would say.
Yeah, Derrick, I wanted to share an experience with you, man. I hadn't thought of this until now, and it was I went to somebody's online calendar, and first off, the domain was mapped to their domain, so it was like
Mm-hmm.
meet.theirdomain.com, and I was like, I wonder if they own this, or it just kind of sparked
Mm-hmm.
my interest because I don't see that often with
Mm-hmm.
online calendar software. But what it did was, of course, so I know that it was subdomain mapping, but then they had like kind of more like a card display with an image of all of the excuse me, appointment types that you can choose.
Mm-hmm.
And then you select it and it's your regular online scheduling. And then when I got the reminders, it was all pointing back to like, you're receiving this reminder because you scheduled at meet.theirdomain.com. And I said, man, that's like a fully
We white labeled.
immersive.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's what I
Mm-hmm.
thought, white labeled. So I reached out to the person, and lo and behold, they said, oh, they let us map the subdomain. I said, oh wow, that's a cool feature, but you also can manage all of your appointments
Mm-hmm.
too. Have you looked at something like that, or is that similar to kind of like that online builder approach you're thinking of?
Yeah, I think that's so. Again, that's just one of the challenges of being horizontal. It's like you
Yep.
find these little pockets, and man, I would love to. In an ideal world, we could just be the best tool for all of these different use cases,
Right.
and
Right.
maybe we'll get there someday. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I think like if it's the type of experience where someone wants to be able to create an account and then log in, view their past bookings, create new bookings, like almost I think of like the system that my the guy who cuts my hair uses, it's like booker.com or something like that, I think is the, and I can log into my portal and see past appointments. And then that starts to leverage, it starts to lean more towards like office scheduling. And I don't know, SavvyCal might get there, but I think there's a lot of wisdom in kind of focusing. And so I would say probably for the time being, SavvyCal is trying to be best at, I'm a professional person, a founder, a manager, partnership person, salesperson, and I need to find times to book with external people, maybe looping in internal people from my team and including their availability on the link, or maybe I want to be part of a round robin link and I'm in a pool of reps that we need to spread load across. That's where SavvyCal really shines.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we close out, Derrick, I wanted to give you the floor twofold here. I wanted to let you announce or speak to any new features that have launched or you plan on launching that maybe people will be excited about. Then also, how can people connect, find more about you or SavvyCal, sign up? Where should they go?
Yeah. So something that we just released in the last month or so, really excited about, is the ability to share availability with people outside of your team. So if you're familiar with something like Calendly, we have similar functionality where if you're on the same team, you can add multiple team members, and then the availability you present represents the combination of everyone's, free times, basically. But that's historically always been limited to just people internal to your team. And the thinking here is, and this is derived from kind of customer demand, people who maybe they're in kind of a partnership circle here and they're meeting with person A, but they want to factor in person B's availability, who's also going to attend the meeting. And rather than you could send out a meeting poll and propose some slots and ask people to vote on times. You could do that. But if person B is willing to just share their free busy time with you as an external collaborator on SavvyCal, then you can just add them to your link, send the link over to person A, and now they're picking a time that works well for all three of you. Nice. And that can extend to even beyond just three people. So we're really excited about this. I think it's going to take a while for the market to fully grasp the power of this and start to use it. But my hope is that people will gradually start to kind of build their network of contacts in SavvyCal, so that, if you and I are needing to book pretty regularly, we could send each other SavvyCal links and schedule back and forth, or we could kind of take it to the next step and say, all right, we're going to mutually share our availability with one another, at SavvyCal being the kind of holding our availability in escrow. and then I can just create events similar to how you could create it with an internal person, with like Google Workspace calendar sharing. Now, like sense. Because we've mutually shared this, I can just create an event, and I know I'm not going to collide with one of your times that you're busy. Really excited about this one. It's available now, and we're kind of keeping our ear to the ground on parts of the flow that need to be improved and trying to have quick feedback cycles on that. But yeah, I think I wanted to mention that one. And yeah, if folks want to keep up with me, I do blog occasionally at DerrickReimer.com. I'm still on Twitter, even though it's getting kind of crazy there.
It's tough.
Or at Derrick Reimer on Twitter. And then, of course, SavvyCal.com is where the product lives.
All right. Appreciate it. And everybody will have the links to everything in the show notes. Derrick, I can't thank you enough for coming on to the podcast. It's twofold again for me. There's a whole lot of twofold this episode, but partly, reconnecting and just really hearing about the person and people behind the software. But also, I'm always excited to introduce software in an intelligent, responsible way to my audience, because it may be the missing piece. It may be that thing that saves them 1 hour times 7 a week, times 4, times 12. And before you know it, they're like, I'm so glad. So anytime we can do that, I'm thankful. So thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. Listeners, thank you so much for entrusting us with your ears for the time that you have. And everybody, continue to automate responsibly, my friends. Thanks for coming on, Derrick.
Thanks for having me.